Welcome to Let's Get Curious, the podcast for women and mothers seeking connection, support, and inspiration. We are friends, mothers, and therapists. Lori, a physical therapist, and Dorothy, a speech and language therapist. Together, we share our personal stories, including IVF, birth experiences, and navigating children's learning difficulties. Through our discussions, we uncover profound lessons for personal growth. Join us on this journey of curiosity, compassion, and empowerment. Welcome to Let's Get Curious. Welcome back, everybody, to the Let's Get Curious with Replenishing Soul podcast. Today, we are lucky to have Dr. Paul Kesselman back with us. And for those of you who may have not caught our previous podcast with him, we did one with Paul back in December of 2025. It was episode 24, and it was titled ADHD, Anxiety, and Big Feelings. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, we highly recommend that you check it out. And just to give you a little bit of a background for those of you who do not know Dr. Paul, he is the director and owner of Kesselman Clinical Associates. It is a group private practice located in Devon, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb right outside Philadelphia. And at their practice, Paul and his colleagues provide counseling for children, adolescents, adults, and families. The practice has a large focus on treating ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, anxiety, and depression. The group provides individual, group, couples, and family counseling, as well as psychological testing and assessment. When Paul is not helping families at his practice, he enjoys spending time with his wife and 5 children, playing baseball in an adult baseball league, doing public speaking engagements at area schools and community events, and being a regular podcast guest on topics such as anxiety, depression, parenting, and ADHD. For the purpose of today's podcast, we will be talking about the topic of self-talk, the stories we tell ourselves all day long, and how this translates into our intentions, actions, locus of control, and overall health and mental health. So welcome back, Dr. Paul.
Thank you for having me back.
Yes, we are so excited for this whole next topic.
Me too. Self-talk is a big passion for me in terms of working with a lot of kids and adults that I see. And it's a topic that all of us can connect to. So I wanted to start off by asking you both a question. Because I refer to self-talk in different ways. And sometimes I will say, what's the conversation that you're having in your head? And people look at me and say, what do you mean? What's the conversation? I don't talk to myself. I say, sure you do. You're having thoughts all day long. You don't realize it, which you are, and you do. So what's something that has been a recent conversation in each of your heads? And I'll actually share, too, something that kind of came up for me this week. And it could be anything. We're going to look at the quality of it and whether it's positive or negative or neutral.
Yes. Well, I will start with that. And I will definitely say this, that as I've gotten older and continue to work on myself and do self-growth, I definitely have way less negative talk, I've noticed, because it's been something always in my conscious mind. And of course, now having children, I'm really conscious of that. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't still pop in, right? And so I would say one of the things recently for myself is when something happens with my girls, whether it's just a normal day-to-day conversation and they describe their day and I have like an opinion of it, or, oh no, this kind of went wrong. I'm in my head immediately thinking, how do I want to respond to this? And what is the right way to respond to this? So I find myself, that talk that you're talking about, that the talk that happens all day long, that's where my head goes a lot of times of how do I want to react to this? What is the right answer? And then obviously when it is a situation that scares me or I don't know a lot about, that's when I find myself going down the negative loop.
Yeah.
And then obviously if it's something more where I feel more in control of it, then I'm having the conversations in my head of how do I want to present myself and present this topic
Hmm.
in a certain situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're pre-processing it sort of before you kind of even are going to put any output into it. You're kind of aware of if there's something negative in there, and then what you want to transform that into when you deal directly with the
Yes.
situation verbally. Yeah,
Yes, and I
which
would say that that has been more recent in my life, especially brought on to by children, where my younger self for sure would have been more the negative self-talk of,
yeah,
okay, how do you not know this? Why don't you know enough? Just
the
all the doubt
critical.
and the
Yeah,
critical.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. But I know how that does not serve a situation, and especially because my children are such a reflection now. I think that's why I'm using this as an example, because that's what's so present in my life, and being really conscientious of what is inside of me and what is my stuff versus their stuff, and not to put that on them.
yeah. You're really doing some mindful parenting there for sure. You're catching yourself,
I've
which is
worked hard
great.
on it, Paul. I've
It
worked hard
is.
on it. But like
It.
I said, it was never there. It was never there. And even when they were younger, it wasn't there. It was more reaction, right? Reaction
Yeah.
to a situation,
Yeah.
reaction, reaction.
Yeah. And
Where now I'm on the other side of it a bit. I think just also because they're older now, they're teenagers and they have opinions. So I have to really be careful with how and what I say so that they will continue to want to share with me and be open with me.
yeah, we talked about that at the last podcast. I remember
Yeah,
that was an important topic because we were talking about keeping the dialogue open. So that's another
right.
subtopic of this, of how we
Yes.
moderate our own responses as parents and what space that creates for our kids to feel like they can continue to dialogue with us about
Hmm.
things, making things
Hmm.
safe for them, creating
Yeah.
the safe space for them.
Yeah. And I can tell you when they do goof up a bit, where I will go negative still in my head, is worrying about how affects my reputation as a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something more internal that I'm, working on, of recognizing that I know the conversations that happen in my house. It doesn't mean that that's what they might do out in public, and I have to kind of separate myself from if they goof up and not internalize what people are going to think of me, and
Yeah.
am I a bad parent, and that I'm not doing my job,
Right.
because people are very judgmental. You
Right.
read that on all these neighborhood Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Somebody posts something that a kid's doing, there's somebody coming in
Yeah.
judging. You could be like judging the parent, right?
Yeah.
And so that, I would say, from a negative standpoint, that is my most negative self-talk
Yeah,
of,
and you don't get to refute those things. Your ego and how you are judged by that out in the public eye and we're all kind of more in the public eye, right? Like what we're doing right now.
yeah,
This puts all of us in the public
Yeah.
eye, and it's so much more that way. So we do wonder about the conversations that are happening outside of our house and how we're coming across to other parents, or other parents thinking like, that house embodies the same ideals that we have, or are they taking one example of a situation and saying, man, we don't want our kids going over there. They're not following the same suit that we do as parents. What's important to
right.
us?
So
So,
that would
yeah.
be the most
Okay.
negative self-talk I have in my
Okay.
head right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yes, is what I
Yeah.
would say.
So just to go there for a second, because it came up organically, I think that's a situation where, as a parent, the same process you use to kind of think through about what you do for your kids inside your home, what can I do to kind of deal with the negative self-talk I'm having right now about judgments from other parents or the community or things like that? What can I tell myself right now to kind of not get stuck in a negative loop and get on that negative hamster wheel, right? Can I
Mm-hmm.
say to myself, I'm sure other parents have been in my position before, other parents can relate. One mistake is not indicative of who I am completely. I wouldn't judge somebody else by one situation. I'd want to know more. So I hope that the same principle would be applied to me. That's kind of how we moderate. That's a good example of how we moderate our negative self-talk when we're feeling fear or frustration or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And just knowing that I have to separate myself, right? That they are their own
Yeah.
little human beings, and ultimately we want them to goof up a bit, because this is how
Yes.
they learn.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
want them to mess up a little bit while
Right.
it's still
Right.
technically a safe space
Right.
versus,
Yeah.
much
The
later. But yeah,
opportunities.
that's what I would say is my most
Yeah.
negative self-talk
The
is,
opportunities for
yeah, how
mistakes.
am I being judged outside of the
Yeah.
home?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything you said, Lori, I can relate to 100%. 100%. The other one, big one for me, is feeling responsible for my child's emotions.
Mm.
And if he has difficulty with emotional regulation, so if he is dysregulated, I feel like it's like a failure on my part.
Mm.
I didn't say the things, I didn't do the things. I could have been prevented if I had done these 20 different things. And it's only through being able to like take a step back that I actually got to that point. Because I remember when I was in my 20s, and I've shared this in our intro podcast, number one, where I dealt with anxiety and depression in my 20s. And I didn't realize how negatively I was talking to myself. I just had symptoms. So I was anxious. I was feeling all these, and I didn't even have a label for it at that point. I just didn't feel good in my body. But I didn't realize that how negative I was in my thinking until I did this exercise where I was required to write down every thought I had. And I was writing it down as I was getting ready to go to work. And it took me like 30 minutes from wake up to out the door. In 30 minutes, I had written down like 40 things, 40 negative ideas. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I feel fat in these pants. People at work don't like me, whatever. So I think a lot of this is also being able to take a step back and actually listen to the things that you're saying to yourself. Because at that point, I wasn't aware. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. And you writing it down is very
Yeah.
powerful because then you see it out there. You see that the quantity, and you
Yeah.
know that you just said that 40 things in 30 minutes. You know, if that's happening throughout the day after day, that's just
Right.
grinding on you. That is sucking your bandwidth away from you and things around you that you want to direct it towards. And the negative self-talk, we know it gives you something to do, but it's not productive. There's nothing going to come from that negative self-talk. It's where we recognize it, see it, and then step back from it a little bit, take the bird's eye view and say, hey, is this really accurate? Am I just being super hard on myself today? Do I need something? Is there something I need to nurture myself, whether give myself today or reach out to a friend? Just so many things that's where the mindfulness comes. We talked about the mindful parenting before with you, Lori, but this is where the mindful self kind of care, which is both one and the same, the parenting and the self-care. I think they're so intertwined. We can't care for our kids unless we're caring for ourselves. The oxygen mask falling from the roof of the plane, right? You put it on you first. So it's so important that we recognize that. And that's why I wanted to talk about this topic today, because I think this dialogue is running in a lot of us. I think we learn sometimes as early children or get into these habits of negative self-talk. They continue. And then what happens is over many, many years, and I think I'm in the same boat as you, I just kind of accept it as normal, as part of my daily, just waking up in the morning and kind of saying to myself sometimes like, wow, today's going to be a hard day, or this is challenging, or man, I'm not off to a great start, or what's going wrong? What's the shoe that's going to drop today? And putting myself into that kind of mindset to start the day, you're lugging a lot of weight right from the start. The day's going to be challenging. We know it. Every day has its challenges. If you're starting off that day with all that negative self-talk, you're really putting yourself in a tough spot, So that's why I want to talk about it today. And there's certain parts of this that are really important, certain concepts that I want to lay out. So in terms of the idea of locus of control, which is a concept that's been around in psychology for a long time, there's this idea of what's called internal locus of control and external locus of control. When you have an internal locus of control, you think that you have true control over most of the situations that you're encountering. That if something goes well, it's as a result of something you did. Conversely, if something goes not well, it's also because of something that you did. And obviously there's pros and cons to each of those. If something goes well and it's a result of you can kind of bolster your ego. You can probably repeat that behavior again. You can transfer that knowledge to other things and have more success and build your productivity and your self-esteem in a healthy way. If you're blaming yourself for the thing that went wrong, that's a tricky slope. It depends on how much you put yourself down, how deep that runs. But then the opportunity there is, if I made the mistake, I can change the mistake. So it's how you kind of pull yourself from those bootstraps up of the negative thinking to then own the situation and say, well, it was me that did this, so I can then therefore change this. So that's the internal locus of control piece and the yin and yang of that. Now, the external locus of control is the opposite, right? It's when things go well in my life, it's because of something independent of me. If I got a good grade on a test, it's because the teacher helped me out that day. If I got a hit in baseball, it's because the pitcher probably slowed down that pitch to me rather than the other players on my team and allowed me to get that hit. Now you're not taking responsibility for the good things that happen in your life, right? Which is
Oh,
very
Yeah.
important for our
fascinating.
self-esteem, our agency, our ability to feel like we can connect with and control healthfully the things that are going on in our life, that we can affect our
Yeah.
environment, right? Rather than being controlled by our environment. I always think of it as kind of a buoy in the water, right? The waves come and the buoy just kind of floats and goes sideways depending on what the waves are doing, rather than the buoy kind of being connected from underneath and the buoy having its own mind saying, all right, the wave's coming, but I'm going to kind of lean into it a little bit and offset that,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the external
Mm-hmm.
locus of control for those kind of things. And then when things go badly with the external locus of control, then a person feels kind of hopeless. They say, everything around me has control of me. I don't really get to control it. You know, it's my relationship that's making me feel bad. It's my job that's making me feel bad. It's my grades. And the list goes on and on and on. They produce kind of a litany of things that come from the outside to make them feel bad. So we can see how this affects, and I'm always talking about kids and adults. We're always thinking about the kids' mindset moving forward into becoming a young adult, right? And how they kind of build their mental framework around this kind of stuff, the external versus
Yeah.
the internal. And you can see kids that you could probably identify very easily and look at and say, wow, this kid I can see has an external locus of control. The way that they talk and their self-talk is about the world, you know, having control of them. I never get to do what I want to do. Everybody else gets this. I don't get that. You know, when you hear more of that, that's quite plainly external locus of control versus the kids that say, hey, I worked on my science project. I'm really proud of that. I got a good grade, and that's great, but I'm really proud of the work I put in. And my teacher gave me feedback on it, and I just feel really good. I want to do more science, you know, and then they kind of
Mm-hmm.
I get a little momentum from that. It's so stark the differences when I'm working with kids and I see that. Then I talk with the kids also about the locus of control. It's something I want them to understand, and they get it. They do. They're kind of saying, "Oh yeah, I'm always blaming everybody else in the classroom rather than thinking about what I can do to make change." Or I'm blaming my
Mm-hmm.
teacher. You know, that's interesting. I realize I'm always kind of looking to the environment, the people around me, or the things around me to say it's that thing or that person's fault. So the great thing about this is it's very changeable. But like you were saying, Lori, it's hard work. It's kind of a daily grind, you know, a daily
Yeah.
discipline.
Well, and my
And I'm just
question.
smiling
Oh, go
here.
ahead.
Oh, I'm just smiling here because I know like a handful of adults that are like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, and maybe you should ask your question, Lori, first, but I'm just wondering like how changeable is that with adults?
Harder with adults for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
bet.
plasticity of the child brain is much easier
Yeah.
to make change when they're younger and as it's developing versus adults who get very set into those habits. Yeah, much.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah,
if you're set on it's your fault, it's everybody else's fault, how
yeah,
dare you
yeah,
blame me? You're
yeah.
gaslighting me.
Which means you need to be super intentional when you leave my office if you're an adult after the session where we just said like, yeah, I totally get that. I see what I'm doing. And then the next day
Yeah.
something happens and you revert right back to that way of thinking. It's kind of like, all right, I know
Right.
I do that. So how I know I do A. What's going to be B? What's going to be the opposite of that right now? You know, what's that going to look like for
Yeah.
Right.
my thinking?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and my question was, especially with children, is that way of thinking being more taught to them, Paul, or are we just born that way? So I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand. I know there's no direct answer to this question, but I'm just trying to understand a bit more of from such a young age, because I have twins and one very early on negative. And we have some other complications that we've been working on. So I could understand a bit where the negativity would come
Yeah.
for her. The other one, if I could have half that kid's confidence, I would not be who I am today. I would be such a different
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, like even just having my twin girls, again, and obviously you parent each kid differently. I get that. But for the purpose of this conversation, what I did with one, I did with the other, right?
Right.
My language, my
Right. So that's a
conversations,
constant.
all of that.
Yeah.
That was a constant. And so that's my question. Are they born this way? Where do they pick it up from,
I think it's
Paul?
both. And this question comes up. It's a great question. It comes up all the time. It's one of my favorite questions to talk about and just kind of philosophize about. But I think it's both. I think temperament, I think optimism and pessimism is something that we're kind of is in our temperament. The way that we look at the world early on is just kind of sort of on a a molecular level. I really do on the temperament. But I do think our environment and what we do and how we respond does make a difference. I think we can certainly, with negativistic kids, we can certainly nurture that negativism very easly with our own criticism, our own kind of the way that we respond to things around our kids and the environment that we keep laying down. We're driving in the car, we're kind of saying, nobody knows how to drive. Oh my gosh, get to the grocery store. Man, they never have the yogurt we want. This is ridiculous. I feel like nobody in the world, and we see it time and time again. And, we know that negative kids are going to pick up on that more easily. They're not going to debate, they're going to have probably less opportunity to kind of knock that around their head and kind of say, is dad being realistic about this situation? Is he kind of just frustrated? They're going to just kind of absorb that language probably much easier than a positive kid will. And potentially that kid maybe kind of say to themselves, like, man, dad's just kind of frustrated right now. I saw the yogurt in there last week. I mean, I know they have it here sometimes, right? I don't know what he's talking about, but, it needs to come on Wednesdays, not Mondays. So I think it's both. I do think it's both. And it's hard to say what percentage adds up to what, that's right. Such a kid by kid. But I do think you see those, especially the negativistic tendencies, very early on with kids, which means as parents, we need to be that much more aware of when we have one of those kind of negative, pessimistic kids to kind of really try and create opportunities and environments for them to keep hearing the positives. And we talked about this last time too. I mean, the number of positives that you need to hear to outweigh the negatives is a lot. It's like a 10-to-1 ratio, especially with kids who are kind of more on the negative side, or anxious kids, or other types of things that you were talking about before that kind of complicate the scenario. So that's also the tide that we're fighting against. The other environments that we're not around. Even if we're super positive, we hope that their teacher is being positive. We hope their coaches are being positive. We hope that the other adults in the neighborhood are being positive. The kids at the bus stop. The things we can't control. Speaking of locus of control, right?
Yeah, and I think kids relating to kids, right? I mean, I think they too end up having these internal insecurities that they're obviously not conscious of. And then we say negative things to the people, our friends around us, to make ourselves feel better. But we're not conscious of that at 5 and 6 and 7, even though it's essentially happening that way. Right. And then kids are misinterpreting that. I know. Yeah. I mean, one of my daughters came home the other day and was just like, oh my God, Mom, like everybody was just so negative today at school, like beating themselves up about like how about this project and how they didn't this and they didn't that. And I was like, I was so proud of her to recognize
just about that.
What's around her.
I
know.
Instead of like joining in with it, kind of sort of separating out and kind of the recognition that was going on. And maybe her being able to say, well, I don't feel that way. I feel bad that they feel that way, but I feel like I'm ready, and I feel confident.
And this was coming from my kid who was negative in her younger years, and we've been working,
that's great.
On stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
she's been able to really.
Wow, what a great observation.
Yeah, exactly.
But she saw how draining it was. She saw how draining
the energy
it was.
used for that. Right. Like that's kind of running in place. It's spinning your wheels. It might make you feel bonded to the other people by saying, "Oh man, this is so difficult and hard." But if that jumpstarts the working on things, great. But if it just kind of stays stuck there in the negativity, then what? That doesn't really.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you as an adult, I'm not sticking around those people.
Well, yeah, we don't. Right, that's true.
Right.
And that's a good point. As an adult, you start to think about the people you surround yourself with. You only have a finite amount of time and energy as an adult, so you sort of reevaluate those things sometimes and say, do I want to be around, this person who every time we go out on a Friday night to talk, they're just kind of complaining the whole time and talking about how bad it is. These are the conversations that people get into where they say like, do I just want to spend my time that way, or do I want to be around people more positive? Or when I try and uplift that person, they just kind of go right into the negative, Yeah.
Yeah. I don't stick around for those anymore.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I get it.
I see your name come up on the telephone. I'm sorry, not going to answer that right now.
Ignore. Yeah.
Not in the space.
Right.
I'm not in the space to hold space for you right now.
Right. I have to prepare myself for that call. Let me breathe a little bit and be mindful of what I'm going to have to say.
Yes.
So yeah, so the other thing, the other concepts I want to just introduce too, besides the external locus of control and internal locus of control, and this is something that they're doing a lot in the curriculum here in Pennsylvania, in the schools, which I love, and they've been doing it for a while, is kind of the growth mindset. They probably
Yep.
do that around
Same
the nation
here.
as well,
Yep.
which is awesome. I wish they did this stuff when we were kids. There's a lot of things I wish they did when we were kids for mental health and awareness, but they're doing it now. And it's great. The growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And these are opposite concepts too. And just by the nature of the words, you can figure out what it means. But growth mindset has this concept that we can change over time and we can make progress toward things. And things aren't just set because they are. Versus a fixed mindset is this is the way it is. It's not going to change. Why bother putting in the effort to change it? And that's the way it is. And this applies to so many parts of life. One of my kids got a saxophone this year and just he wasn't really practicing it much. And he kind of was going into the fixed mindset of, I'm not going to get better at this. We're going to have the concert at the end of the year. And then about a month ago, this was great. I mean, it happened organically. He went over to a friend's house and they were playing their instruments together and he had fun with it. And now he's kind of coming to us and say, I want to get together with my band, a couple of the other kids, and practice. And he got that. That was a positive peer socialization effect. And he's 10, so their voices matter more than our voices at this point, how quickly that happens.
I'm realizing that too.
Exactly. But he was able to
Realizing
get
that too.
out of that fixed mindset of just, I'm terrible. I'm never going to be able to play the saxophone too. I like the saxophone. This is fun. I feel like I'll be ready for my concert. I'm excited. When is the date on the calendar? Can't wait for that night. It just really flipped, which was awesome. And that's where as parents, we get that opportunity to kind of afterwards say, what do you think changed for you? You were so set in the way you were thinking about the instrument. And now it's so different. It couldn't be any more different than it was before. Was it you just did a little bit and then you felt a little bit like you were getting some movement forward? Was it the idea of it before you put your hands on it? It was intimidating to you? What was it? I haven't had that conversation yet, by the way, but I plan to. My wife and I plan to have that conversation. So so the fixed versus growth mindset, which seems to obviously be in this example I'm talking about, like on a continuum that can change. And how do you foster more of the growth mindset? Again, language being very important. And
So, can you give us some examples of what language you might use to help promote a growth mindset, maybe in the saxophone
definitely.
example?
Yeah. We don't want to use any absolute language. We don't want to be talking in black and white terms. You know, this is, you're going to be the best, you're going to be the worst. We want to kind of make that gray area. And we want like everything else in this world, we want language to address the fact that things are gradual in a process, but that we know that a process can move in the right direction, and we kind of keep reinforcing that in a positive way, you know. So we just don't want to use that really strong all or none language to address things with our kids. It just towards the things that they're wanting to address, and just in generally in our house, we don't want to say things like this always happens to us, or we never get to do that, or that's one of the cognitive distortions that they talk about called black and white thinking. It's a popular one. A lot of people, when I talk with it at my office, they kind of say, oh, I do that one. I do that all the time. And I say, all the time, it sounds like black and white thinking right there. You're just saying that, right? So we
like never and always,
exactly.
Right? The words never and always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So exactly, and we talk about that. Right? It can't be that way. So trying to talk with our kids in ways that are in the gray area, and understanding that a mix of most of life is going to be some good and bad, and that works out to be somewhere in the middle, and representing that ourselves and tolerating that, and also. This is, again, talking what we discussed at the beginning, bringing down the affect a little bit. The way that the emotional tone when we address things is important too. Not just the words we say, it's how we say it. Of course, that's all the time.
Yes.
So we can say things in a gray way, but the content could be gray, but our emotion can be really bound up in it. And then it could be confusing for kids. It's like, you're saying it's okay to be in the middle, but you seem like you're nervous, Dad. You know, it's like, I don't know. I don't know whether to take the content of the words you're saying versus the tone. And I think most of us probably go by the tone, not the content, because we're such emotional creatures.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you said this, but you seem like that. I mean, it's usually not the other way around, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My son all the time is like, why does your voice sound like that? It doesn't matter what the words are. Your voice sounds different. I don't know the words he uses, but it's just like, can you use your normal voice? And I'm like, this is my normal voice. But underneath that, I am a little irritated, or I am a little anxious, or I am a little, and he just picks up on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's the mindful
Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing, right? Paying attention to your own triggers. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I'll get asked a simple question and inside I'm like, how do you not know that answer? Whether it be like from my children or my husband, when you start to like, you're triggered for whatever reason. And so like, that's where I try to also stop myself of like, why is this triggering me?
Mhm.
Why is this a
Yeah.
trigger? Sometimes I don't have an answer. Sometimes it is just, it could even be just like fatigue.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, oh, okay, something from childhood
Right.
where I was like, oh, I remember having this tone towards me. And then
Yep.
whatever
Yeah.
be the situation, right? There's many things, but I think paying attention to when you get that feeling in your body, just that like the squirreliness, where there's something that triggers the tone, and then your spouse or your child calls you out on it,
Yeah.
and you gotta have to
Mhm.
pause for a moment and go, oh, yeah, that was a trigger.
Yeah.
Why?
It's a great point. Because when we get triggered, we're either going to overcompensate or undercompensate. And then we're not being authentic. And people who love us and care about us and are close to us and spend time with us all the time are like, what was that? That was a fake laugh. Like, well, that's not your usual laugh. My wife did that to me like a couple months. She's like, that was the fakest laugh. I was like, oh, that feels awful. You know? Like, and you're right, by the way. Now I feel stupid for 2 reasons.
Busted.
Yeah, exactly.
Busted.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, well,
But it's
yeah, I'm like
interesting
turning
how
red right now
quick
just
it
thinking
just
about it. I seriously am. But yeah, you're right. The triggers are important. So being aware of those triggers and
and how quickly they come on, right? Like it wasn't a conscious thought for you to give a fake laugh. It just happened for whatever was the space that you were in at that time. Sometimes it's just like also like you don't have the energy, right? And I find it so interesting of how quick the thought process happens on such an unconscious level that we then react.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Right. And there are those moments where I'll catch myself. I'm like, why did I act that way? Why did I act so angry about something when really I'm not that bothered by
Yeah.
it?
It doesn't really. Why did I make a big deal of that when right now I'm sitting here rationally thinking
Why?
about like, I don't care about. I literally don't care about that. Why did
Yeah.
I make that hill to dive on?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all of that reaction of myself, to your point, Paul, then creates the pathway for how my children are going to respond in the growth mindset or the fixed mindset, the internal versus external control. Yeah, it's so fascinating.
There's another concept too that kind of ties in with this conversation, which is the thinking global or specific. Is it about everything? Going back to the black and white thinking again, or is it just about specific things? And obviously, the more global that negativistic thinking about all kinds of things, school, friends, this, that, and the other, the more anxious and depressed we can become, and the harder it becomes to change that. Versus just specific things we get negative about, and other things we don't. So that's another kind of way to think about it. Is my thinking, or is my child's thinking, more geared towards so many different factors? Or is it just some pockets that I see it in? And of course, the question would be why those pockets, why not the other ones? That's for each parent to kind of figure out or talk with someone like me about. But yeah, that has another big impact too on things. Yeah.
So then what do you do if your child is negative about everything? If you have that more global child?
Yeah. It's hard. I usually talk with parents. We try to find the smallest thing that they can be either. It's going to be hard to be positive. And when you have a kid that's that negative, I usually say, all right, we're not going to find something to be positive about. Let's get that out of our heads. We're going to try and find something to be less negative about. So we're going to turn down the negative, not necessarily up the positive, because you can't go from 103 fever to 97 in one shot, right? You go to 102, right? So we need to slowly dial down the negativity to then try later to some level of positivity, positive internal attribution. So we're going to try and, again, change the language to be less negative. And I'll have parents literally do this with their kids in sessions and outside. I'll say, all right, can you say that a bit of a different way? I know you're really angry about what happened, but can you change that language a little bit? And it's kind of a fake it till you make it thing. I will say that. I'll say, I know you're not going to believe it right now when you say it. And I'll joke with kids in my session. I'll say, I just want you to say it this way instead. Instead of everyone hates me, it's like, I have problems with a few kids in my class. And they'll say, I have problems with a few kids in my class, like with the attitude. And I'll say, can you say it again? And it's like anything else. If you keep kind of saying that, the brain's connection to our language, even over time, when we're faking it and trying to convince ourselves of something, it will change. But again, it only comes through repeated exposure to that and attempts to change it,
That's fascinating. So even if you don't believe it, if you keep saying it, eventually you'll believe it.
Yeah. And the
Wow.
behavioral change will come with
Love
that
that.
to suit that. And all the other things will change as well. Your actions, your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But at first it feels really strange because you're just saying it to say it.
Yeah.
You know, you're saying it because the adult sitting with you
Yeah.
is saying, you should say this. And you're like, here's another adult, tell me what to do. Right. You know, but yeah, with time.
Right.
And
Right.
for adults, you said before, you said something about with adults, how do we change that?
Right.
Same
Yeah.
process, the fake it till you make it kind of thing. And just repeatedly trying to do that. And what you spoke about before, kind of writing things down, being aware of how negative you are. We're not aware of a lot of things until we write them down. It's real. The power of the pen or pencil is
Totally.
extremely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you, Paul, that when I did that exercise, the other part of that was for every negative thing I wrote, I immediately had to write the
Mm-hmm.
opposite. Everyone hates me at work. Well, no, that's not true. You just had this great conversation with so and so or whatever. And this exercise was part of like this 10-pack cassette tape program that I bought off of an infomercial in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. And do you know that after that exercise, I didn't have to finish? That was like tape 3 of 10. And after that exercise, I felt well enough where I didn't need any
Wow.
more. It changed me
So
that
powerful.
much. Later on, I was like, what am I missing? I should probably
Right.
finish this just because I paid for it. But it was the one thing that helped me more than anything else, was just to get a hold of my thought
Yeah.
patterns and really pay attention to what I was saying to myself.
So powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Well, and let's just say you did the work.
Right.
You did
Right.
the work. And that is
Yep.
one of the things I see across the board, even in my own field of physical therapy. When people are like, this doesn't work, it doesn't work. But are you doing the work? Are you fully investing 110% in yourself before you say those words?
Yep.
If you are, then
Then
okay,
by
I'll
all
give it
means,
to
yeah.
you.
Right.
But right? But majority of the time, we're half in for whatever reason. And we have a bunch of other excuses. I don't have the time. I can't do this. All the excuses come in. And so kudos to you though, Dee Dee. Like you did the work.
Thanks.
And to do the work, you have to be comfortable, right? Growth happens in uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing. From a physical therapy standpoint, there could be some pain and some uncomfortable feelings in your body as you're trying to rehab and strengthen yourself. People don't like to feel those physical feelings, right? Whether it be physical pain, mental thoughts. And so that's another big piece is you have to get uncomfortable in any type of self-growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kudos to you, Dee Dee.
I love
You
that.
did the work.
I love that example. And you're
Thanks.
so right. I talk about this constantly. You got to become uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone, because even the negative thinking, because it's a habit, becomes comfortable. It's kind of an old shoe that you've been putting on for so long. You just slide right in. And we're asking you to go out and buy some new shoes and break them in. It's like, why would I do that? These shoes I can just slip these on and go out the door. I'm not going to put on the other shoes and they're going to hurt my ankle. You're asking me to do that? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because we want you to be a healthier person. We want you to be happier. Are you truly happy this way? Well, no, but I'm safe. Yeah. Well, safe isn't always best. You got to get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Yep, definitely.
Right.
Definitely. Change only comes through leaving comfort, and growth only comes through leaving our comfort zones, challenging ourselves. Anxiety, depression, everything. All of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So we really need to be interpreting those as cues that there needs to be some self-work that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I refer to it as opportunities. I always say it's an opportunity. A lot of people who are negative will refer to it as the problem or the issue. I say, no, we're going to call this an opportunity. This is a gem sitting in front of you. I want you to reach out there, grab it, and do something with it. Don't just go around it. Let's take it. Let's take that opportunity together to go after this thing and feel good about it once we've been able to kind of get control of it a little bit. Because that's what you're going to feel. You just don't know that feeling yet. Once you get there, once you spot it, it's kind of like when something clicks. Then all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, this is what it feels like to not be negative. Oh my God, that's why that person over there seems happy all the time. I was always mad at them and angry at them because they were smiling and friendly to people. But now I kind of get it. They're feeling good about themselves and they're trying to create their energy in a positive way and give that to others. Okay, maybe I don't hate them as much. They're not as annoying anymore, right? Yeah.
Yeah, got to change the lens that you're looking through.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and your own behavior. I know. Well, like I said, my kids have been my biggest
Mm-hmm.
teachers. Yeah, and it's still a
Same.
work in progress. You know, we are teenagers. We are not home as much these days, and we are out and
Mm-hmm.
about, and you know, they just come home, Mom, I'm doing this, this, this,
Yeah.
this, and trying to stay in that connection mode time,
Yeah.
Paul. Obviously, they're not with me as much because they're spreading their wings as they should be. And so it's like when they come home and there's like these small moments where I knock on the door, I make sure it's okay to come in. Yeah, is now an okay time to mom just for us to kind of catch
Yeah.
up? And you know, most of the time it
Yeah.
is. But yeah, and then just staying on the pulse, you know, like checking in with them, asking questions,
Yeah.
and just paying attention to the words that they're giving back to
Yeah.
me if there is an issue that I need to help them with mentally.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't follow. Yeah. Because I think too at this age, especially with teenagers, and obviously you could speak more of this, Paul, from a professional side, they don't always share immediately.
Yeah.
Right. And so trying to be there and hold that space for them and just letting them know that the space is there, that we can then talk about things when they're ready to. But yeah, that's definitely one of my worries of like, okay, are they
Yeah.
good? Are they mentally good? They're telling me they are, but are
Yeah.
they? You know, and again, I can read the energy pretty clearly, but still, I mean, there's things that they hold on to, I think, before they're ready to tell you, and just to help them with that mental
Yeah.
piece of knowing that they're not
Yeah.
alone, and it's safe. We're open to talking to us. We're not going to be yelling. We're not going to
Yeah.
be angry, because that's definitely when they don't want to come
Yeah.
around and open up
Yep. Yeah.
what might be bothering them mentally.
Yeah. No, you're so right. So much of the, probably 90% of it is them just knowing that the space is safe to talk, and then they're kind of processing on their own. They'll come around when they're ready, you know. Sometimes it's hard because us as parents, we, you know, depending on our personality and temperament, we want to deal with it sooner or later. So if you're a sooner person and you're matched with a teenager who's a later person, you have to do a lot of, you know, working through your own triggers and, you know, kind of self work there.
Yes.
Yeah, until they finally,
Yep.
you know, and then they say it, and you go to your partner, you go, oh, they finally said it. Oh God, I've been waiting weeks for this. Man, oh man, oh, my shoulders just dropped 5 inches. Thank you, Lord. You know,
Yes.
so,
Yes. Well, because you want to protect, I mean, I want to protect them from that negative
yeah,
self-talk, or what something might have been said
yeah,
to
what
them,
they've
or
been
they
holding on to.
overheard, you know, at school or in their peer group. Right. And so I know
Yeah, yeah,
that's where I say growth never
yeah,
ends, right?
yeah,
Regardless of age. And that's, I
yeah,
mean, I'm continuing to grow more and
yeah.
more with my girls. It's
And my kids are
fascinating.
younger, so I mean, most of them. My oldest is 13, and his youngest 3. So my middle group, my 5, 8, and 10-year-old specifically. My 13-year-old is really kind of moving more in that direction of the independence and seeking us out at the right times. But my 3 middle kids, they just ask me questions all day long, and which is so cute. But you know, it's a lot. And is the 31st question going to be an important one? And I'm going to be just kind of dialed out because the other ones are about like those pretzels. Where are they in the pantry versus like what are we having for dinner later? You know, when's the next eclipse? I'm like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Let me just finish this up on my lap. I'm preparing the presentation. We'll look that up. I swear. Use the Alexa or something.
Yeah.
I love you, kid. But I'm afraid.
All of those at my house, all of those come at
Of course.
bedtime, and they're like these
Yeah.
gigantic, monstrous
Yeah.
questions that I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
even begin to tell you.
I
Yeah.
remember my 6-year-old asked me when's the next solar eclipse was. It was a specific,
Oh yeah.
not lunar, but solar. We looked it up. He's like, "Can you put that in your phone?" And then like every few months he'd be like, "Is it still on your phone?" I'd be like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't believe you. Show it to me on your phone." I'd be like, "Dude, it's okay." Like, okay, Dad. I guess I'm creating a safe space for to talk about eclipses if I keep it in my
You
phone,
are.
right? Like,
Right. Yeah. Safe space and trust.
trust,
He gets to
exactly, right?
trust
Like I
you,
joke about it, but
right?
it's
He's
true, right? Like,
trusting you.
yeah, like that's important to them, and
Yeah.
I have to realize like that's their world in that moment. It's meaningful to them, so it's meaningful to us,
Right.
right? And
That's
paying
right.
attention, and to be
That's
serious for a
right.
sec, paying attention to those little threads. We've talked about this before. You get that little thread sometimes, and you go from something that you think is completely meaningless with a kid to like the center of the dartboard. It's the thing that they've been thinking about for weeks on end. You know, you're like, how did I get from that to this? But it's just the dive into their child brain that kind of just weaves through and kind of gets to something really important,
Right.
you know, that they've been working on or noodling
Right.
with.
It's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. Yes. So, Paul, as we kind of wrap up things here, give us 3 bullet points that parents, for them, like again, for you as the adult and or your child, you have that negative self-talk. 3 simple steps to just get yourself
Yeah,
started.
yeah. Practice it. If you're a parent who has negative self-talk and you're aware of that, practice away from your kids working. So I said kind of take the smallest piece to work on before. We're trying to make things less negative for really negative people and work our way up. For you as a parent, try when you're away from your kids to just work on positive self-talk in little things. Walking outside and literally saying like, wow, it's a blue sky, rather than saying it's so cold today. Like, I got to go get my jacket. Where the heck? I don't even know where that jacket is. Or did I give that to somebody? Oh man, I'm going to be freezing all day. Just start to try and practice that yourself in little moments throughout your day, because it will translate. It really does. And people say, that sounds so hokey. And I say, I know when you first do it, it feels that way, but you will see it will catch fire. You'll see more and more of that, and it'll come more naturally to you. That's what we want to do. We want to get the muscle memory. Your brain doesn't have the muscle memory yet to positive. It's all muscle memory for negative. So start to try and do that yourself a little bit at a time. And then what you'll see is it'll show up with your kids organically. Yeah. So that's one bullet point I would definitely say. The other thing came up during this conversation today. You said it, be mindful of your triggers. The triggers are so important for what's going to push you in one fork of the road or the other, the negative or the positive. So just talk that out with yourself, kind of be an observer of yourself rather than in it in the moment, and kind of step back. That's something I've been working a lot on recently, just trying to kind of look at myself, observe myself from above, kind of like a bird looking down from the sky, and saying, just because something is going on in me doesn't mean I have to react to it. Doesn't mean I need to do anything about it. I can just observe it and kind of think about it, and then think about what I want to do intentionally about it. And then the last thing I would say is, when it comes to kids, I said this before, the adults around our kids are so important, their language. So to the extent that you can, I do this. I'll tell teachers, I'll tell coaches when they start a new season or a new sport or something, or a new grade level, I'll say things like, hey, I just want you to know we're working on this with my child. These are the kind of things we try to respond to. I'm not trying to give the teacher or coach a million different things to do. I don't want to overwhelm them, but I say, like, here's some guidelines that we're trying to work on with our kid and our language with him or her. And kind of like lay that out, because as we know, like, the more our children hear a positive message from the people around them, the more that they can observe that. I'm really involved with baseball, as you said in my intro, not just personally, but coaching in my area. And I'm so aware, the first thing I'm aware of is not the kids, because kids will be kids. I struck out, throwing the bat on the ground. I'm so keenly aware of the coach's response to that kind of stuff. And to me, that is so key. The lesson in that moment was the coach kind of like, hey, get down to their eye level and say, like, hey, you're going to get another chance next at bat. I saw you in practice. I knew you can do it. Versus like, God, now we're 6 runs behind. We just left 3 on base. You could have hit that ball. Why did you look at that last strike? Like that. So I think really being dialed into the adults around us and trying to create that positive atmosphere amongst the systems and the village that works with our kids is very, very important. Our grandparents, our babysitters, our coaches, our teachers, the list goes on and on, trying to be a unified, positive voice. Yeah.
Right. And my question too around that then, Paul, is like perfect example, like you just said, with the sports, right? And so there's that kid, sees that their coach is just pissed off at him, yells at him. Is it then good to then bring them home once the dust and everything has settled and talk then about that coach's behavior and how to like interpret things, right? Because I mean, again, the coach is allowed to have his emotion. Sports are intense. We all get frustrated and fired up, right? And so is that where you would then recommend, like, we come back, we have a conversation around it and kind of break it down? Because I think too, it's important for the child to realize that that person's allowed to have their reactions, but it's not a reflection that they should be taking on themselves.
That is extremely important,
right?
right? So they don't
Yeah.
internalize
I
that.
mean, and sure, they might have to, maybe you did strike out because you aren't practicing
Yeah.
enough. And there's a part about being
Yes.
real, right? Being
Right.
real about, you haven't been practicing enough.
Right.
So it's kind of like having each person own their own stuff,
Absolutely.
I guess is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say,
That's so true. Yeah.
right?
And that's a great,
Putting that in the box for the kids, that this is what the coach needs to own. This is
yeah.
what you need
Everybody
to
plays their
own.
part.
It's not about making everything a positive
Yeah.
situation where everybody gets a trophy, because I don't
I don't
believe in
believe in
that.
it either.
But
I
it
think
is,
that sends the wrong
yeah. So
message.
am I right about addressing it to be that way
Yes.
of,
Yes.
this was the
I think that's
scenario, let's own what is ours
yeah.
to own
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I think that's really important. Yeah. And I know for the baseball example too, my kids will sometimes come, the first thing they complain about is the umpire. And when
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
coaching, the first game for flag football I said this year to my group was, there's something really important that I'm going to say to you all right now. And they said, are we going to have fun this season? I said, yeah, that's really important. I said, but there's something really important. And they were just guessing. They keep interrupting. I was like, guys, wait, we're not going to blame the referees after every game, because that's what's been happening in the past. That's an external locus of control. That is a perfect example.
It happens with my
And
girls too. Yes,
I
it
said
does.
to them at the end of that huddle, the first game, I said, if you come over and you blame the referees for things like that, I might sit you down for a few minutes and not put you in place. Because we're focusing on what we can do and what we can affect and what we can change. Referees can't, do they affect the game? Yes. But it happens on both sides. The conversations we have all the time, right? Sometimes you're going to get the call, sometimes you're not. Sometimes somebody's going to be in a bad mood and not paying attention, right? Just like the coach that yells at the kid for the strikeout or gets upset. It happens. What can we own? And if you're going to tell me and sit here that it's about the referee or the umpire who called that third strike on you, like, it's like what you said. Well, you also missed 3 practices in the past 2 weeks. I'm not making you feel bad, but like, let's be realistic about this. How can you get better at swinging the bat when you're not practicing, and then blame it on the umpire? Is that really realistic for the situation, right? So, yeah. So I think, like you said, everybody plays their part and we talk about that. And I think talking about the coach first is a good way to spring into like, all right, so now what? It's safe to talk about the other person. Let's talk about ourselves now and what we can do differently. How we can be a better teammate, how we can be positive out there, how we can practice more, whatever, you know. Yeah.
Right. And that's where you get to then change into that growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, and taking advantage of those situations that come up while still being real and owning your stuff in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, Paul. Any recommendations that parents can go out and read, whether it be books or websites and stuff more about?
So there are some books that I've been using right now. There's a grit workbook that is great for, I would say, probably kids 7 and up to 12 right now. It's got an orange cover. I'm just trying to remember the name of it, but you can find it on Amazon if you search grit. It's the grit workbook for kids, and parents can sit down and work with their kids on this. It's got a lot of real world experiences and vignettes that illustrate sports, classroom stuff, friendship things, all the different things. And it really starts off by looking at optimism and pessimism with kids and understanding more about if you're just naturally that way, and then kind of building into what are the skills you want to acquire to build your grit. And what is grit? What is grit and what is it not? Because a lot of kids think that grit comes from being the strongest person, being the most popular, being the best pitcher on the team. And it talks about how all that stuff is not grit. That stuff is not about positive self-esteem. It's about how you feel about yourself and your ability to push yourself out of your comfort zone. That's what we're talking about. And grit, as we know a lot of times, is going to be a real indicator of success in this world versus just natural talent, natural ability, right? We all, as adults, know this, right? You can go to a great school, you can be the valedictorian, things like that. But if you're not going to push yourself out of your comfort zone or work hard at things, you're not going to accomplish things, especially in this world right now, for sure, where it's harder than ever to do that. So, so it gives a real nice understanding of grit and the hard work and understanding about self-talk and the impact of that, what's going on cognitively.
Is it that one?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Grit
Okay,
workbook
so
for
it's
kids.
called the Grit Workbook for Kids, CBT Skills to Help Kids Cultivate a Growth Mindset and Build Resilience by Elisa Nebelsign.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Great.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, I will put that in the show notes along with your website and everything.
Thank you.
Paul, any parting words, you two? Any parting words?
I think just keep the daily mindset, the intentionality that we all want to keep for ourselves and for the people around us. And I think a lot about energy. So the positive energy that we put out in the world is positive energy we get back. We get that from our neighborhood. We get that from our community. We get that from our school. So you can just as easily, in my mind, bring the positive as you can the negative. The same energy you devote to putting into thinking negatively is the same that you put, but one has much of a greater impact on yourself and other people. So keep that going. Give that as a gift to yourself because you care and love yourself, and give it to other people too. And that's kind of how it pays forward in the world. It really does. I believe that.
I do too. I do too. Dee Dee, any parting words?
Oh, I thank you so much, Paul. This has been so enlightening, and it's just such a reminder to take care of yourself, put yourself first, especially Mother's Day coming up right around the corner. It's just a thank you. It's just a reminder that you have permission to check in with yourself and take care of yourself, and that'll just make you a better parent for your
Absolutely.
kids.
Yeah. And don't judge yourself too harshly. You're the one that has to be with yourself your whole life.
Yeah.
Other people will look at you from the outside, but you, the self-care piece and respecting
Yeah.
yourself and loving yourself is so important. So thank you for having me
Yeah.
again. It was great to be here again.
Oh my gosh, anytime, anytime. There will be more of these in the future for sure. These are such great topics and great reminders that we all need. And
Yes.
again, like we're not taught this stuff, right? We were not taught this stuff. This path for Dorothy and I is something that we actively took on ourselves because we didn't like what we felt or how we thought about things. And so we, every just self-growth, constant self-growth, get uncomfortable, do the work. And we are definitely in different spots. And then there's still stuff that presents itself as we're talking about in this podcast. And my children bring it up for me. But at the same time, like when you let it go, there's such a freeing. There is a freeing, and you feel free, you feel lighter.
Definitely.
So, yes, I know. So everybody work on yourselves, personal growth, stay curious. And as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the other side. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and is based on the opinions and experience of Lori, Dorothy, and their guests. The content should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or a treatment. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.